So I want to talk about when a law becomes binding. When does it become effective? We say in Italian entrato in vigore, so that means it's become binding, it starts. And normally an ordinary law from Parliament will need to go through the process to be made law, so it needs to be proposed. That could be by the government or by a member of Parliament, or maybe 50,000 signatures of citizens with a popular law, popular initiative they call it. Then that law must be discussed and it must be criticised by the opposition and supported by those that are behind it. And maybe amended, and then in the end the House of Deputies must approve it, and then it goes to the Senate, which goes through the same process, and eventually that law must be, if it's approved by both houses, must be signed by the President, who can veto it for a period of time if he wants. But eventually it will become, it must be signed by him, and then it goes into the Gazzetta Ufficiale della Repubblica. And 15 days later, after it's published, it becomes law, so it becomes binding. It enters into a state of being binding. Why does it need to go into this Gazzetta Ufficiale della Repubblica? Because it needs to be communicated to all the interest groups that are interested in this. Maybe certain lawyers, maybe with the Buona Scuola, which was a law to change the schools. Some lawyers were interested in specialising in this area, or maybe headmasters in schools were interested in how their schools will change and what they need to do, or unions, if they're interested in their members' interests and how to protect them, etc., etc. So it needs to be published, and these groups need to know where to go to see it, and it's in that magazine. So that's when it becomes binding. Now, when does it stop being binding? That's another important factor. It can be abrogated by another law in an implicit way. That an implicit way could be another law more recent is in contrast, and so it automatically becomes abrogated. Or it could be explicitly abrogated, so another law can explicitly say it no longer applies. And in that way it stops being binding. Or another way is it can be annulled by the Constitutional Court. If it's considered unconstitutional, first of all it needs to be referred to the court, and that could be done by a group of members of Parliament, or the regions, or a court can do that in fact. But once it's referred, it needs to be judged by the constitutional judges whether it complies or not with the Constitution, and if it doesn't, it will be annulled, and that's another way a law can finish its life. Another way could be the abrogative referendum. So this is when some people are very against the law, and we saw this when Berlusconi privatised the water, the public water. He made it private. Many people were against, so they collected a list of 500,000 people, citizens, and that went before the Constitutional Court, because some laws you can't abrogate, for example taxes, but that particular one, the one about public water, you could abrogate, and so they had to have a referendum, and it needs more than 50% of the electorate to be for the abrogation. So it doesn't matter how many people vote, they need to reach that half mark, 50% or more than 50% of all the electorate. And often, many referendums never reach the 50% because not many people vote. Even if they win the referendum, if not enough people have voted, then it can't be abrogated. But in that case, in the water, it was abrogated. Another principle of when it can be binding is it cannot be retrospective. So a law can only be applied to situations in the present or the future. So, for example, if it's legal to smoke marijuana, and then they make a law that it's not legal to smoke marijuana, all those people that smoked marijuana in the past can't be, judged according to that law. It's only from that moment forwards. So it can't be done in a retrospective manner. And another important consideration in this, time and space of the effectiveness of a law is where can it be applied? It can be applied, laws in Parliament, made in Parliament, and approved and made laws only apply to their Italian territory. So they can be applied on the Italian territory and to Italians and foreigners. So it doesn't matter if you're a foreigner, you still have to respect all the laws within our territory, within the Italian territory.